If warm woolen mittens are one of your favorite things, then you'll want to learn how to knit warm woolen mittens. Hello, this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits, and today's video is all about how to knit the basic mitten for kids. So grab some yarn and needles and let's get started on knitting some beautiful handmade mittens for all the little ones in your life. Let's do this together. All right, knitted mittens are not difficult to do. I am going to show you very easy step-by-step instructions on this entire mitten pattern using double-pointed needles. They are not hard to use double-pointed needles, so I hope you give it a try. If you're unfamiliar with working with double-pointed needles, I would recommend that you watch my other video, which gives very easy instructions on knitting with double-pointed needles and some tips and tricks for that as well. So I'm going to assume in this video that you've got some familiarity with double-pointed needles, but if not, I would recommend you watch that video first. I'll have a link in the upper right-hand corner. So for mittens, this is very similar to the pattern I posted earlier about with adult-sized mittens, but this one is specifically sized for kid sizes. So you can knit several of them up. They knit up really fast for all your little ones in your life, and they're just also make perfect Christmas gifts or gifts for those young ones. So let's go over the materials that you need for this. As I mentioned, I am using double-pointed needles for this. I'm using a US size 6 needle. That gives it a nice dense fabric for a mitten, nice and warm. And then for my yarn, I'm using a worsted weight yarn. So any worsted weight yarn would do. I would recommend, though, that you use an acrylic or wool blend yarn for mittens. You don't want to use cotton yarn, as that will just soak up moisture and not dry as fast. So a nice acrylic or wool blend works really well for mittens. You're also going to need a pair of scissors, a darning needle, a couple stitch markers, we'll use those a couple times, and a little length of scrap yarn that we're going to use at one point during the mitten making as well. All right, so let's get started by casting on for our mitten. I'm just going to use a long tail cast on method. You can use other cast on methods if you wish, but the long tail one is I'm going to choose today. I'm going to give myself a tail here, and with one of my needles, we're going to cast on 28 stitches. So I will meet you at the end of casting on these stitches, and then we'll join in the round to start knitting our first round. Okay, now that I've got 28 stitches on my needle, I'm going to transfer some of those to my other 2 needles here. We're going to do 10 stitches on one needle, 10 stitches on a second needle, and that will leave 8 stitches for my third needle. All right, I've casted on 28 stitches, transferred them evenly somewhat to 3 of my double-pointed needles. So now I can begin to join them in the round, making sure that my cast on edge is all facing in the inside of my triangle here. And I'm going to take my empty 4th needle and knit with that needle with the working yarn coming off of my right side needle, and I'm going to knit the stitches off of this needle. Okay, again, that double pointed needle video will give you more instructions on that if you need some additional assistance. But we're going to start knitting the first round, and the first round is going to be a 1-by-1 ribbing. So we're going to knit 1 stitch, purl the next stitch, and do that all the way around the entire round. So I will meet you at the end of this first round, and then we'll go on from there. Okay, after you've got your first round of knitting done with 1-by-1 ribbing, knitting 1, purling 1, repeating that throughout the entire round, we're just going to do that round for a total of 15 rounds. So let's do 15 rounds and we'll be back, and then we'll start with the thumb gusset. All right, we finished a very nice ribbing for the cuff of the mittens. We did 15 rounds, and now we're going to move on to do the gusset of the thumb. So to continue with the next row, after we did the ribbing, we're just going to do one round of all knit stitches. So that's just going to be kind of our in-between round before we start the thumb. So just do one round of knitting all, okay? All right, after we completed that round, we are ready to do a little setup row to position some stitch markers for the gusset. Now, this is the only difference in the pattern between the left and the right hand mitten. You'll notice that the left thumb is positioned a little bit kind of flat on the left side, and the right mitten is nice and flat on the right side, and that just makes it for a little bit more comfortable fit. So the only difference really in the right and left mitten for this pattern is where you position in the round the gusset. So for the right mitten, we're going to position it right in the very first needle. So that's where we're going to place our stitch markers. So to place our stitch markers, those stitch markers are just going to really tell us when to do some increases for the gusset in between the thumb. So this round is just to place those stitch markers. So for this right hand mitten, we're going to knit 2. And then we're going to place one of our stitch markers on our needle, and then knit 3. Okay, and place another stitch marker. And now we'll just continue to knit all stitches to the end of this round. All right, now we're ready to do the thumb gusset. Now, the thumb gusset is going to be comprised of some increased stitches that we're going to do between these 2 stitch markers. And that's going to create for us kind of an increased V section to make room for the thumb. We're not going to do that increase every row or every round. We're only going to do that every 3rd round, but this very first round we are going to do some increases. So let's do that increase round first. Round 1 of the gusset, we're going to knit to the marker. Now just slip that marker, and now we're ready to do our first increase stitch, and it's going to be a make 1 right stitch. And here's how to do that. We're going to lift up this little strand between these 2 stitches, lift that up with our right needle, place it on our left needle from front to back. See how I'm placing it on that needle? Now we're going to knit that stitch the normal way. And with a make 1 right, it's a very tight stitch. So sometimes it's very hard to get your needle in there. What I like to do is, while I'm putting it on my needle, trying to not split my yarns here. Yeah, here we go. Give it a little tug to make that room for that stitch, and then you can more easily make that knit stitch. But at make 1 right is always a little difficult. Okay, then we're going to just continue to knit. We made 1 increase stitch. We're going to now knit to the next marker. And now we're going to do a make 1 left. And make 1 right and left just kind of shows you the leaning of the increase as we do it. So it's properly leaning in the right way. So make 1 left, we're going to again pick up that strand between these 2 stitches and place on our needle, but instead we're going to place it the other direction, from the back over to the front, just like that. And now we're going to knit this stitch through the back loop. And that is our make 1 left stitch. So we did a make 1 right after our first marker, a make 1 left right before our second marker. And then just knit again to the end of the round. All right, when you get done with that round, we are going to do the next 2 rounds just all knitting. No increases in that. We're just going to knit solid for 2 rounds, then we'll go back to another increase round. So I'll meet you at the end of these 2 rounds of just plain knit. All right, I completed 2 rounds of just plain knitting, and now we have 5 stitches between these 2 markers. So now for the next round, we're going to do another increase round, and we're going to do a make 1 right and a make 1 left in between this gusset. So let's do that a minute, and then I'll show you the repeat pattern to finish up the gusset. So let's slip the marker, knit to the marker, slip the marker. Now let's do a make one right again. So lift up that strand between the stitches, place on your knitting needle this way, give it a little room there so you can properly knit that stitch. Knit that stitch, knit to the next marker. And now we'll do a make one left. Lift up that strand, place it on the needle the opposite way, and knit through the back loop. And then we will again knit to the end of the round. So we're going to do that little sequence of rounds where we do that increase round, then we do 2 plain knit rounds before we do the next knit round. And we're going to do that until we have 11 stitches between those 2 markers. Once you do that increase round where you increased it to 11 stitches, you can stop the gusset rounds and we'll go on to knit the hand. So increase round, then 2 knit rounds until there are 11 stitches between the markers. So I'll meet you at that point and we'll go on from there. So here's where we are. We now have 11 stitches between our stitch markers. I just did the increase row. We do not need to do the 2 regular knit rows after that. We can stop at this point. So now we're ready to knit the hand of the mitten. But before we do that, we're going to take these stitches that are between the markers and put them on a scrap piece of yarn, because we are going to first knit the hand and then we're going to come back to the thumb. So we're just going to remove those stitches for now and then knit the thumb after the hand is complete. So let's do that together. We are going to knit to this first marker. And here's where you need your scrap yarn, and you need to thread it onto a darning needle. We're going to remove this first marker, and now we're simply going to just move those stitches from my knitting needle onto this darning needle, all 11 of them, the 11 stitches that are between the marker. So just slip them off to your darning needle. And remove that second marker. And now you have these stitches from your thumb gusset, kind of just going to sit there and wait for us to get back to the thumb later. So that's why we put them on this scrap yarn, just to kind of hold them in place until we need them. Now we can continue to knit another round here, but you notice that we've got quite a gap here between these stitches and these stitches over here. So I'm going to add a couple additional stitches to kind of fill in that gap. And so we're going to cast on 3 additional stitches for that gap. And here's how we're going to do that. A very simple cast on. We're just going to take our working yarn and wrap it around our thumb, and then just insert our needle underneath the thumb into that hole that your thumb made, and slide it off and place it on. So it's really just kind of a wrapped around that needle. So there's 2 stitches and 3 stitches. So now we've got 3 additional stitches there, and we can now continue to just knit and kind of pull that first stitch that you knit kind of close to those cast on stitches to kind of close that up a little bit, and we can continue to knit to the end of this round. All right, so at this point, now that we've got our thumb kind of hanging out here waiting for us for later, now we can just continue to knit up the hand of the mitten for several rows, and it's just plain knit every single round. We're going to do that for, let's see, I think I have it for 20 rounds, and that should make it a good length for a kid-sized mitten. Now you can adjust this and you can knit more or less rounds depending on the size of your kid's hand. If you have that child around, you can have them, you know, try this on, and then if the hand comes beyond their pinky, just beyond their pinky, then you know that you got it right size. So you can give 20 rounds a try if you think you need more or less. you can adjust that to fit the size child that you're knitting the mitten for. So let's do 20 rounds of this hand and mitten, and then I will we'll get back up and finish up with some of the decrease for the top. All right, 20 rows have been completed of just solid knit. Now we are ready to do the decrease rounds for the tip of the mitten. So similar to before, we're going to do a setup round, which is going to place a stitch marker in the spot where we're going to trigger us to do our decreases. So let's do that round first. We are going to knit for half of the number of stitches that are on the round. So it's going to be 14 stitches, half of 28. So let's knit for 14 stitches, and then we're going to place a stitch marker. Okay, that is 14 stitches that I knitted in this round, and we'll place a stitch marker and now knit to the end of the round. Okay, now we are going to do a decrease round, and we're going to do a decrease stitch before and after each the marker and the start of the round. So to begin the decrease round, our very first set of stitches is going to be a decrease stitch, and it's going to be a knit two together. So let's knit these first two stitches together. Now we're going to knit our stitches till we have 3 stitches before our marker that we placed. And that's going to be where we do our next decrease stitch. Okay, here's our marker, knit 1. Now we got 3 stitches left before the marker, and now we're going to do another decrease with these 2 stitches. And this time we're going to do a slip, slip, knit decrease, which is to slip these 2 stitches one at a time as if to knit to the other needle, then transfer them to the left needle and knit through the back loop. That is the slip, slip, knit. It's a decrease. And now we'll knit to the marker, slip the marker, and now we'll do that again where we start with a knit 2 together, and we'll knit to 3 stitches before the end of the round. Okay, 3 stitches before the end, and we'll do a slip, slip, knit. So slip, slip, move them to the other side, and knit those 2 together through the back loop, and knit the last stitch. Okay, so we decreased 4 stitches in that one round. We started out with 28 stitches after the hand. Now we've got 24. So now the next round is just going to be all knit stitches. We're not going to decrease this time, just knit all the way around. So let's do that. Okay, now we're going to do another decrease round. It's the exact same decrease stitches that we did previously, which is to start the round with a knit 2 together. Then we're going to knit 2, again, 3 stitches before the marker. There's the marker, 3 stitches before that. Now we will do a slip, slip, knit decrease. It's abbreviated SSK. Knit 1, slip the marker, and let's do that again. Knit 2 together. Knit to 3 stitches before the end of the round. There's our 3 stitches. These 2 are going to be now a slip, slip, knit decrease, and knit the last stitch. Okay, so now again, let's do one more round where we just knit all the stitches, and then we'll do 2 more decrease rounds after that. All right, now all that we need to do is do 2 more of those decrease rounds. When you get near the end, sometimes you have to kind of plan ahead a little bit, and I'm noticing here I only have 2 stitches before the marker on my second needle. So I'm going to need to get 3 stitches over there. So I'm just going to transfer a couple stitches from my first needle to my second needle. That's going to help me do that decrease stitch. So sometimes you have to just look ahead a little bit and move some stitches around if needed. All right, let's do that decrease round again where we start the round with a knit 2 together. We're going to knit to 3 stitches before the marker. All right, at this point we're going to do a slip slip knit. Knit 1, slip the marker, and knit 2 together again. And knit 2 3 stitches before the end of the round. There we go, to a slip slip knit and knit. All right, I'm going to do that decrease round one more time. The reason that we're not doing a little knit row in between these last couple is because we want the decreases to go sharply and quickly now to give this a nice rounded tip to the mitten. So let's do that final decrease round, and then we will finish it up and get to the thumb. All right, that was my last decrease round. If you did that all correctly, you should now have 12 stitches left on your needle. I have 4 on each of my 3 needles. So now we can close up that close up the end of this mitten, and we're going to do that by just cutting yourself a bit of a tail here, threading that end onto your darning needle, and we're going to now just transfer the stitches off of our knitting needles onto our darning needle and then pull it closed to tighten it up. So let's just move each stitch one by one from each of the needles to the darning needle here. All right, and now you can just give it a nice tug to close that up. And we're going to just finish the end here by poking your needle in the center there and turning it inside out. And then you can do a little bit more securing here by going one more time through some of these last round of stitches here, just to give it a little bit more secureness there. And then we can weave in our ends. Now, if you don't know how to properly weave in ends, I've got a video about that as well that you can review. But it's a great way to neatly weave in your ends so you don't have to worry about the ends popping out after you wear it. So that's a great video to watch as well. So I'm going to do that a little bit here. And we can snip that off. All right, let's turn it the right side out, and now we have our hand nice and complete, and now it's time to finish with the thumb. All right, let's wrap this up by finishing up the thumb. Our thumb stitches have been waiting patiently for us to get to this point in the mitten. So now what we need to do is transfer some of these thumb stitches onto our knitting needles, and we're going to knit with those double pointed needles just a very small rounded circumference to knit round and round and round to finish up the thumb. So let's start by picking up these stitches that we casted on. So you remember those 3 stitches we cast on? We're going to now place those first onto one of our DP ends. So let's just slip each of those stitches, 1, 2, and 3 onto that first DPN. And we'll just let that sit there, and now let's grab the other stitches that are on our scrap yarn. So we've got 11 stitches on here. I'm going to place the first 6 stitches on my second needle. So you can just grab the stitches that are being held there by the yarn. 3, 4, 5, and 6 onto that needle, and we'll put the remaining 5 on my third needle. And you can remove the scrap yarn. We don't need that anymore. So now we've got, again, a little circular knitting project here with our DPNs, and we can begin to knit in the round. So we're going to need to start with a new working yarn. However you like to start with yarn, I like to wrap it around my pinky here and then get ready to knit. And I like to knit these first cast on stitches first. So let's grab our 4th knitting needle and we can start to knit these stitches. Now pay attention here, because if you look closely at these stitches, they look a little backwards, don't they? That's not normally how your stitches are wrapped around the needle when you knit. They should be wrapped the other way, but we can fix that with this first round of knitting. So instead of knitting this stitch this way, which is going to twist that stitch, we're going to knit it through the back stitch or back loop, and that's going to correctly orientate those stitches on the needle for the next round. So each of these first 3 stitches, knit through the back loop to kind of switch the wrap around the needle, and there's your first 3 stitches. Okay, we can let go of our tail here at this point, and let's finish up this round by knitting the rest of the stitches, the 6 stitches on this needle, and the 5 stitches on the last needle. And there is our first round of knitting for our thumb completed. Now here's a little tip. Remember this tail that we had? Right now it is sitting on the outside of our mitten, and if we continue to knit, this tail is going to be in the wrong spot. We don't want it on the outside. We want it to be on the inside so we can nicely finish it up by weaving in the end on the inside. We don't want to do that on the outside. So at this point, I like to take my tail and stick it through that thumb hole and pull it out through the bottom. Okay, so now that tail is out of the way, and actually when you're knitting, you can kind of give it a little tug every once in a while, and that will tighten up that little gap there slightly. All right, so let's continue to knit in the round this very small little circumference of our thumb. Again, here I can pull that tight, my little tail through the cuff to close that up if you need to. And we are going to do 10 rounds of this mitten. Again, you can adjust the length of your thumb according to your child's hand size. So you can, again, let your child try on the mitten when you think you have enough rounds to comfortably fit the thumb. So when they try it on, and if the thumb stitches go just past the tip of the thumb, then that is the good length. Then you can wrap that up. So if you need more than 10 rounds, do so. I'm going to stick with 10 for this pattern. So I will continue this for 10 rounds and meet you at the end, and we'll wrap it up. All right, I've completed my 10 rounds for my thumb. Now we're going to do one final round where we're going to do a knit 2 together all the way around the mitten to cinch up the end. So again, I'm going to kind of plan ahead, knowing that I'm going to need 2 stitches for each of those knit 2 togethers. I only have 3 on this needle, so I'm going to move 1 over there. I got 5 on this one, and I'm going to move 1 stitch over here. Just kind of helps with your decreases, kind of move those stitches around so you have what you need on each needle. So let's knit 2 together all the way around. So we're going to actually do that 7 times. So 1, 2, knit 2 together. Okay, so now I should have only 7 stitches left on my needle. And we're going to close it up just like we did for the tip of the hand by taking tail, cut it off, thread it onto your darning needle, and once again, let's transfer those stitches from my knitting needles to the darning needle. Pull it tight, and again, let's go in through that center hole. And let's turn our mitten inside out because we got a little cleanup to do on the inside here to kind of secure things. So there's our thumb. You can secure that with grabbing a couple more stitches from that last round if you'd like. And then weave in this end. To save on time, I'm not going to do that again here, but you will want to weave in that end of that. And then I want to show you a tip here to how to handle this last tail that we started this thumb with. You'll notice that we've got a little gap here and a little gap here at the very base of the thumb here at the little inside in the valley of the thumb. And that's just inevitable. You're going to get that when you knit a thumb. So what I like to do is, since I'm already have to weave in this end with this tail, I might as well take advantage of having some needle and thread in my hand and kind of just sew up those gaps, just close them up. And we're not going to do it really anything fancy. I'm just going to grab a stitch from this side of that little gap and from that side and kind of do that for a couple stitches just to close up that gap. See how that's nicely closing up, and then we won't have that little hole there. So just do that as a way to finish that up. Now I want to do that over here, so I'm just going to travel my yarn over to this side by going under a few stitches and doing that same patchwork over here. Again, it doesn't have to be fancy, just a couple stitches just to secure it. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and weave in this last end. I got to do this one too, but I'll do that later. All right, I can snip that off. Let's turn it right side out and see this cute little mitten we just made. There, isn't that adorable? A cute little kid-sized mitten. They do knit up really fast, as you saw here, and it's not difficult to do. You can knit up several pairs yet before Christmas. So I hope you found this helpful. If you'd like to follow along with a written pattern, there will be a link in the description below for the complete written pattern that you can follow along. But you could, obviously just kind of look at this video again and go step by step through it. So thanks for watching, everyone. If you like my videos, please don't forget to subscribe. You'll get notifications for upcoming videos that I post all about knitting tips and tutorials, fun new stitches, and creative patterns. And don't forget to give me a thumbs like up as well. Thank you so much. Happy knitting.